is this thing? Is this like the HomePod's big brother? Maybe it's a desktop dehumidifier or a home theater speaker? Maybe it's a space heater. Well, what about none of those things? Well, okay, maybe space heater. This right here is the Fractal Mood, and does it ever put us into one? We're gonna find out all about this Scandinavian designed SFF case right here, right now on Robeytech. But what isn't Scandinavian designed but still worth talking about are these messages from our sponsor. If you've just built or upgraded your PC and now that Windows watermark just saying activate Windows is just sitting in your face, don't panic. VIP-CDKdeals.com is here to help. VIP-CDK Deals offers legitimate software activation keys at a fraction of the retail price. We're talking deep discounts on Windows 10 and 11, Home and Pro versions, plus Microsoft Office, Steam keys, and so much more. You can even use code RBCK at checkout for an additional 30% off. Check out VIP-CDKdeals.com today and get back to enjoying your PC without that watermark. If you've been around the channel, we have a special place in our hearts for Fractal design. We love the North XL, the Pop Air, and the Terra. The Fractal Terra was one of your favorite cases that we built inside of last year, which, if you really want to check out that very popular build, check this video out right here. So, when Fractal told us that they were going to be releasing a new small form factor PC case, we were ready for it. This is it, the Fractal Mood, which is just fun to say. Mood. With a name like that, you can really have some fun. I built a new PC and let me tell you, it's in a mood. Okay, so the real question is this. Who is this case for? I mean, it's not a traditional PC case by any means, and it's also not the type of small form factor PC that you'd see showing up at, say, a LAN party. Fractal actually had an answer for this question before we could even ask. The Mood is for the modern PC gamer that grew up and started developing opinions about ottomans, among other things. In other words, Fractal saw the need for a PC case that could fit sensibly into an adult's living space without becoming the focal point. Now, you're probably saying, what kind of adult? Yes, there are some of us who love having the PC be the focal point. With the Mood's soft edges, the size, and cloth-like exterior, the vision tracks. Though, to be clear, this isn't something new. We've seen cases like the Corsair 2000D, the NZXT H1, the Cooler Master Encore 100 Max that have a similar, smaller footprint, but they're just less aesthetically tailored design. So let's get to know the Scandinavian design-inspired PC case to see who might it be a good fit for. Let's kick things off with the price and color choices. At launch, the Fractal Mood is available in either Mood Light Gray, which is a bit more taupe than beige. I can't believe that I even have that much wording in my video in general. I got taupe and Mood Light Gray in the same sentence. Or Mood Black, which is what we have right here. Both colors cost $149.99 and they're available right now. Since we're talking about this PC fitting into a living space, how big is it? Well, the Mood is 8.35 inches or 212 millimeters deep, 8.35 inches or 212 millimeters wide, and 17.83 inches or 453 millimeters tall. So from a comparison standpoint, that's about as tall as 3 standard ballpark hot dogs or a giraffe's tongue, and it's slightly less wide than a standard dodgeball. As far as weight goes, the Mood weighs roughly 13 pounds or 4.6 kilograms, which, for comparison, is a whole 0.9 kilograms or nearly 2 pounds lighter than the Corsair 2000D. For case I/O and controls, the Mood has 2 USB 3 Type A ports, 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 Type C port, a combined audio jack, as well as a power button. All of the front I/O is tucked neatly down at the bottom front edge of the Mood. In other words, the Mood has a sensible number of ports accessible from the front of the case. And you know what? I really do actually like where the connectors are at for the I/O at least, because some of these smaller cases try to slap the I/O on the top, and what was once a nice, neat desk with a small footprint now becomes a mess of wires like an octopus. And you know what? You know how I feel about a mess of wires. Now, one thing that isn't necessarily okay is the I/O stuff here at the bottom. Because of how HDMI and stuff like that is, sometimes, depending on the length of the cable, you can actually have some issues. So just be careful with the I/O, and especially at the bottom, to make sure that you have smaller DisplayPort and smaller HDMI cables. Just a little, the more you know. Now, as we explore the Mood, we're gonna talk about what actually fits inside of this thing. And we're gonna have to give some commentary along the way, which we typically save for the end of a review like this. I think you'll understand once we kind of get into it. Okay, let's start with how to open this thing thing up. So starting at the back of the case, this perforated panel is locked into place by 2 tabs at the bottom. Just apply a little tug, it's actually a pretty good tug, on either side of the panel and it comes right off. After that, there are 2 screws that need to be removed and set aside somewhere safe. And once those are out, you can just lift up the top and hey, you're in. As for motherboard support, the Mood is limited to mini ITX motherboards, and for very good reason. As big as this case looks, the economy of space inside is actually very precise. Just a word of advice here, you're going to need to make sure that any work you need to do on the motherboard, like installing NVMe drives, mounting brackets, or coolers, you're going to need to do all of that outside of the case. Now we found that any changes that need to be made to the motherboard required us to actually take it out of the case entirely, which put us in a bit of a bad mood. Now, when we look at GPU support, the Mood is limited to GPUs that are under 56 millimeters tall. But in all actuality, Fractal recommends GPUs that are 2-slot GPUs around 40 millimeters. Because of these dimensions, the Fractal Mood does fit into NVIDIA's SFF ready guidelines. It's too bad they don't have like a cool badge to actually let you know that, so it's a little bit hard to know when something is or isn't. Come on, NVIDIA, Jacob, let's get that fixed. With that in mind, for our build, we were actually able to fit Gigabyte's RTX 4070 Ti Eagle overclock GPU in there, and it was a bit snug. Now that GPU is about 50 millimeters tall, which means you could also fit like a reference Radeon RX 7900 XT or that beautiful Asus ProArt RTX 4080 Super. Now what makes this GPU mounting really interesting is that Fractal included a PCI riser cable that runs to a chamber opposite the motherboard. You've seen this, it's the sandwich design. You've seen this in like the Dan A4 and the Fractal Terra. This cable runs behind the motherboard itself, and it's the precise link to make sure that there is no slack in that line at all. What is also smart in this portion of the case is that the corner case support is removable, giving you easier access to actually install your GPU. It made Kevin happy, and trust me, if Kevin's happy, I'm happy about it. Now moving on to fans and cooling, the Mood comes with a 180 millimeter fan pre-installed at the very top of the case. This fan exhausts hot air out of the top, and let me tell you, this thing can cook. I really wanted to see if we could like cook an egg with it or something like that, but I don't know, maybe that's another video. Now outside of this location, there are 2 fan mounts of the case rear for either 2 120 millimeter or 2 140 millimeter fans. These mounts are on a removable bracket, which is super handy in a small space like this. But whether or not you're able to use that bracket for fans all depends on your choice of CPU cooler and the storage drive. So let's talk about your options. The Mood can support AIOs that are up to 240 millimeter or 280 millimeters. But it's worth mentioning that AIOs get tricky when you start looking at the pump sizes and how to actually fit the hoses inside of this case. Fractal recommends AIOs with pumps around 45 millimeters. So AIOs like the Fantex Glacier 1 would work, but with the massive pump heads on most AIOs, you're gonna have to be fussy about your choices here. And honestly, it's that little bit of extra that you need to look at, and welcome to the world of ITX cases. That being said, Fractal provides diagrams for builders to figure out how and where they need to lay the hosing. It's very Tetris, and even with the guide, it still takes a bit of manipulation to make it work. It definitely isn't beginner friendly, and we have some concerns that we're gonna share a little bit later. If, however, you wanna use an air cooler inside the Mood, it doesn't get any less complicated. Essentially, for a box-style cooler, Fractal gives you up to 123 millimeters, though 110 millimeters is recommended. Okay, we've gotta pause here because we need to clear up what Fractal's talking about here and to clean up our own language around CPU coolers. Now, when we think about tower-style coolers versus box-style coolers, we typically think about coolers that have fans that run perpendicular to the motherboard. Think of coolers like the NZXT T120 or the Deepcool AK620. By this definition, most tower-style coolers, as we know them, would not fit inside of the Fractal Mood. Now, if by tower Fractal meant flat tower coolers, where the CPU cooler fan is parallel to the motherboard, then we're in business. Flat tower coolers or box-style coolers would be your Thermalright AXP 120-X67, which sounds like a spaceship. The Noctua NH-L9X65 or L9Is, or the forthcoming and brand new that you showed up on Instagram, Deepcool AN400, which we actually can't wait to get our hands on because it's 110 TDP, which is crazy. Whatever style we're talking about, the reality is that you're gonna wanna look at the lower profile air coolers, or if you can find them or search on them, box coolers. Okay, we've gotten a little bit too far into the weeds here with the commentary. Let's reel it back to continue about what fits inside of the Fractal Mood. The Fractal Mood does have 2 dedicated 2.5-inch SSD brackets, as well as one 3.5-inch HDD bracket. However, Now, like all other SFF cases, you have to pick and choose what's most important to you, because if it's drive, that means that you're going to be sacrificing fans or foregoing the choice of using an AIO. Now, as for PSU support, you know what? Actually, that's pretty simple. You're going to either use SFX or SFXL style PSUs in the mood. There is no way a full-size ATX power supply is fitting inside of this thing. It's just not happening. And another note, if you do SFX or SFXL, it is always a good idea maybe looking at the Loki with those really nice thinner cables that are just going to be way easier to cable management. And finally, we need to talk about front panel connectors. Now, it would have been a cruel joke for Fractal to give us such a pretty case with constrictive space and then just give us individual plugs for the front panel wires, right? Yeah, that would suck. Unfortunately, it does suck. We have a few individual wires we have to plug in for the front panel. Come on, just give us one that's integrated. Now, since we're talking about front I/O cabling, we also noticed that the internal USB 3 cable was a little too short for us to get it plugged into our mini ITX motherboard with enough slack to manage the cable well once it was plugged in. For someone like me who's just a little OCD about their cable management, and honestly, when you really want to get things managed well in something like this, I just wish they gave us a little bit more cable length to work with here. If there's a cable inside this thing, I need to be able to manage it. It's just kind of a fact of life. So now that we know everything there is to know about the mood, how well did this thing perform in our battery of thermal benchmarks? To answer that question, we have to pause and talk a little bit more about what we were able to fit inside of it. For specs, we try to keep things as consistent as possible with the rest of our SFF test cases, with the exception of CPU cooler and GPU. We'll list the parts on screen right here when we talk about what's changed. What we typically use is the Deepcool AK620 digital for our CPU cooler, but that isn't an option with its 157 millimeters in height. Remember that whole box thing, tower thing? So we had to opt for the Deepcool LT520 240 millimeter AIO. Now, on paper, this AIO does play a little bit loose with Fractal's recommended AIO pump height of 60 millimeters, but by removing that giant RGB cap from the pump head, we were absolutely able to squeeze it in. We also had to swap GPUs from our RTX 4080 Super Founders Edition to Gigabyte's RTX 4070 Ti Eagle OC. Again, it was a tight fit, but this was the most powerful GPU that we had in the time that we could fit inside the mood while staying within its space limit. Now, since we changed these key components, we're going to be talking about the mood in isolation from other SFF cases because we don't want to compare them when you can't really compare them. Okay, so let's go into the numbers. While idling, the Fractal mood had a resting average temperature of 32 degrees Celsius, not bad. Now, under full CPU load though, the mood swung to the hotter side of the spectrum with an average CPU temperature of 96 degrees. Now, hold on, can we just pause there for a second? That is really hot, and that is also not normal, a not normal operating scenario. But I do need to let you guys know, and we're gonna pause again for a second here. We did make sure it was running Intel stock settings. So all in all, that's still warm, even on a 240 millimeter AIO with an i7-14700K. This has to do with our concerns about potentially AIO, or just the fact that, honestly, it's the breathability of the fabric on the outside. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We talk about open case versus closed case. Now, as for 1440p gaming benchmarks, the mood simmered down a bit with an average of 59 degrees Celsius. So gaming was not an issue whatsoever. So what the heck happened here? We have a CPU that's experiencing severe thermal throttling under load, while the GPU, which is definitely showing signs of working, is not struggling near as much. What gives? What we think is going on here is that the cloth covering here is not as breathable as Fractal had actually hoped. And when we looked inside the case cover, the sides of the case are actually solid, so there's no air getting out of there. We had to go back and see what was right about these airflow issues. So we removed the mood's clothy shell, did an open case test. At idle, we saw a 4-degree drop in average temperatures. During gaming, it was actually a 10-degree drop. And under CPU load, it was 16 degrees cooler with the cover off, which means that this cover is responsible for up to 16 degrees when it's under load. To put this in perspective, 16 degrees Celsius is 60.8 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a difference between summer and winter temperatures in the state of North Carolina. All of this tells us that the mood just isn't really handling ventilation well with higher powered parts inside, or just allowing the cooling to get the air it needs to do the cooling it needs to do. What's up, guys? So we're gonna interrupt the review here for a second, because one of the things that we love to do is we love to reach out to brands once we've done our testing and talk to them about what we saw with our data. And we share all of our data with everybody. And again, sometimes it's actually resulted in us finding mistakes and then we'll retest. But this one we don't think there was a mistake here. But in my conversation with the team over at Fractal, a couple of things did come out. Number one, they said that they saw much better temperatures with the 14700K using their Fractal Celsius. And And they know fitment's been an issue, specifically with the AIOs, and that's why they did the whole guide. So definitely go check out the guide if you're definitely interested in doing this particular build, because their guide is very helpful for 240 millimeter. They said 280 millimeters work, though they are a lot more challenging, and they definitely recommend sticking with a 240, which again, doesn't change our recommendation for what CPUs you can put inside of it or anything like that. The other thing too is that for air coolers, just because this is, a negative pressure situation where everything's kind of being pulled in from the two sides and then out the top, they recommend the Noctua NH-D9L, which does very, very well from an air cool side. And then again, for your builds, your 14.6s, your 14.7s, your 7700Xs, that has a tendency to work very well in this case. Love to give you more information. Again, I would definitely check out the live stream, because that's going to be the best opportunity. We're working with the team at Fractal to kind of build something that would be ideal, and we love actually getting to partner and stuff like that. Again, we're still sticking by our data. We still saw that difference between open case and closed case. But again, it just means we're still saying you got to be super conscious about the stuff that you're going to put inside of this in terms of planning, etc., to make sure you get a great experience. Because if you love this case, which I mean, it's beautiful, it's just something to be aware of. Okay, so we've already given some commentary and consideration. So let's button this review up on the mood before we get a little too sour. So if you're considering the Mood as your next PC case, here are some things you should know. Number one, this is a case that is going to require a lot of careful planning. You've probably picked up on this theme as we've been going through this whole review, but it's worth repeating. Everything from GPU size, cooler size, the type of cooler you choose, the pump on the AIO, how much storage you're going to be able to fit, RAM height, heck, even the motherboard itself. All of this needs to be carefully planned out before you loosen one screw. Fortunately, most product manufacturers have the dimensions of their devices listed on their product pages, but you're gonna have to do some cross-referencing, but Fractal gives you all the information you need to actually succeed. Also, here's the cool thing with NVIDIA's brand new SFF ready guidelines, you'll be able to figure out which NVIDIA GPUs will fit inside the Mood without much of an issue, because this is SFF ready. We'd also recommend checking out Tech PowerUp for precise details on GPU dimensions. Those guys actually really have a lot of detail and everything you could possibly want to know about GPUs. Okay, one final note and consideration here, and yes, we did leave like a breadcrumb trail along the way during this review up to this point. Your order of operation here is gonna be absolutely key. Do everything you need to do on the motherboard before it goes into the case. Make sure your GPU riser cable is positioned well as you're installing the motherboard. And be aware that your PSU is gonna be probably the last thing that gets installed inside of the Mood before you get finished. Thing number two, SFF builds are not really beginner friendly, and this case is no exception. Look, we're not picking on the Mood here, but you need to know that building in the Mood is going to put you in a bad mood if you don't go into it with the mindset that this build will take a lot of extra time and planning to make it happen. Be patient with the case and be patient with yourself. We're gonna be doing a live stream build inside the Mood so you can follow along with it if you're dead set on building inside of the Mood, and you can actually watch that right here. Just know from my PC building difficulty standpoint, the Mood is far closer to the Geometric Future M2 than any Fantex or some of the easy cases like the GT302 that we have right back here. Okay, so we've given you the data and we've talked about all of our details. Now it's time for us to give you our thoughts on the Fractal Mood. To start, let's go back to the question we asked at the very top of the video. Who is this case for? According to Fractal, again, this is for the gamer that's grown up, that wants a PC in their main Pottery Barn meets like IKEA-themed living space without it becoming a focal point. Does it succeed at that? Yeah, but I would say not as well as Fractal had kind of hoped. Could it fit in my living room? Sure. It's really pretty, and it does give off your non-typical PC case vibes. But for a media center PC pushing 4K and either in gaming or content, etc., you really do want a powerful GPU in there. And that's where the Mood doesn't accommodate high-end GPUs very well. The biggest thing you put in here is a 4080 Super. So from a media center standpoint, or even from a content playing on a 4K gaming standpoint, 4090, 4080 is kind of your minimus. Where actually the Fractal's own either their Terra or their Fractal Ridge may actually be a better fit for that. Okay, Robey, well what about as a gaming PC? Again, you could build one inside the Mood, but it's gonna have a lot of constraints. So with that in mind, where does that leave us? Does it fail to deliver what Fractal promised? Should we steer clear of the Mood? I'm not saying that that's the answer. We love that Fractal keeps innovating and pushing PC case designs into places they've actually never been. And limitation-wise, it's just a bummer because of how good the Mood looks. And that's where this kind of leaves us. If you're looking to build a high-powered sleeper rig, you could build one, but just not in the mood. Honestly, if that's you, look at like Fractal Ridge or the Fractal Terra. Both of those cases are incredible while still giving you those grown-up vibes. And listen, if you're okay with building a mid-range system, you can still build a modest gaming rig inside of the Mood. Yes, you're a bit constrained about what GPU you can put inside of it, and the cooler limitations do put a damper on the CPU that will be effective inside of it. If you're building inside the Mood, we'd recommend probably an Intel Core i7-14700K or below. Honestly, probably actually recommending the non-K SKUs or 14.6, but you can do a 280mm and it's inking there. It's possible. On the Ryzen side, the AMD Ryzen 7 7800X 3D, the 7700X, those would be like kind of your ceiling for CPUs. Even still, we'd recommend a 280mm AIO for sure to try and make sure that you're giving it the best cooling, especially on the higher end Ryzen, the 7700X, or you're looking at your 14700K. Otherwise, like I said, we'd be fine with a non-X AMD CPU or non-K Intel CPU. While that seems like a bummer, pairing one of these processors with a GPU like a 4080 Super or an RX 7900 XTX or XT would make a decent mid-range gaming system. To me, the Mood it feels like the Audi A4 or the BMW 3 Series, where it looks good, but really the power underneath it, unless you have like an M or an S4, isn't really there. And that's kind of the whole thing. Fractal, I want you to hear me out on this. Don't stop making cases like this. Keep pushing cases that think outside of the gamer's aesthetic bubble and pushing things forward. It does put us in a good mood seeing designs and releasing of cases that are like the Mood and the Terra and the Ridge. So with our critiques, we're not trying to kill the Mood. We know that you guys are absolutely, you guys being Fractal, are absolutely doing some awesome stuff, and we believe in the vision behind it. So with our critiques, we're not trying to say that, we don't believe in the case. We absolutely do. It's just, if you want to build in it, you just need to know the kind of stuff you can put inside of it. And we want to see them take the feedback and improve it, which they did with their brand new Fractal Era, which was taking their older one, improving upon it, and I feel like the same thing could potentially be done here. And for all of you hopeful builders out there who are seeing this, all we want to do is set the right expectations for the kind of systems that will absolutely succeed inside of this case. You're going to want to plan and plan a lot, and you're going to be in a much better mood if you do. So that's it, my friends. That's our review of the Fractal Mood. We want to give a huge shout out to Fractal, not only for just an innovative case design, but also allowing us to take a look at the Fractal Mood. But we want to know what you think about it. Do you like the design? And what other fabric colors or things would you like to see in a case like this? Also, if you're going to build in the Mood, what hardware would you put inside of it? Let us know all that down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring the notification bell so that you get a notification each and every time we post a video like this right here on Robeytech. Also, if you have questions, you want to just talk about it, maybe talk about the hardware or some help getting the right build and parts inside of it, head over to our Discord server, discord.gg/Robeytech. Amazing place to talk to like-minded tech and PC enthusiasts that love to talk to you about what you can put inside of this. And you know what? You might just make a friend. Also, follow us on all the other social media at Robeytech, absolutely everywhere. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.